Welcome in, everyone, to a very special episode of American Joyride. We are joined today by Chad Robichaux, who is the author of Saving Aziz, How the Mission to Help One Became a Calling to Save Thousands. He's also a Marine veteran, and he's going to walk you guys through what happened in the pullout and collapse of Afghanistan. We're very grateful to have you here today.
Thanks for having me on.
So before we get into that, for the viewers, could you kind of lay out what your military background history was for them, please?
Yeah, I come from a long line of long military history. My family, 84 years of service, World War II, Korea. My father's a Marine who served in Vietnam as an infantryman. Both my sons are Marines. One served in Afghanistan in addition to myself. And for myself, I was a Force Recon Marine. Spent 14 years in special operations, and was very fortunate to be part of a JSOC task force, a Joint Special Operations Command task force. And in that capacity, I did 8 deployments to Afghanistan between 2003 to 2007.
And in those 8 deployments from 03 to 07, on the ground, is it pretty sporty? Is it pretty violent? Like your experience personally, how bad were things when you were over there?
Well, I mean, 2003 was, it's the initial, still in initial phases of the United States pushing the Taliban into the mountains of Afghanistan, and so there's a lot of kinetic fighting in special operations. We weren't engaged in a lot of the kinetic fighting, but all your infantry units and all the kinetic conventional military forces were just in very violent and aggressive battles with the Taliban to get capture and gain control of different provinces. My command was really focused on capturing and or killing the most worst Taliban on the battlefield. My job was AFO, Advanced Force Operator. Essentially, I did all the clandestine logistics to go ahead of my unit, put them on target to capture or kill those bad guys. And I typically would work in a singleton capacity, meaning being alone with local nationals. And this is where I met Aziz, and Aziz was my interpreter, ultimately my teammate, and more so my friend. We spent weeks at a time, months, sometimes out, the two of us, doing our operations and putting our soldiers on target in the mountains of Afghanistan, across the border into Pakistan. And, during those weeks and months together, we got to know each other on a very personal, intimate level, developed a strong bond and friendship. He saved my life numerous times, but I'd say I probably saved my life every day. Like, don't walk there, don't talk to that person, don't eat that. If you talk right now, they're going to kill us. Like, he's just an amazing human being, always put his life before mine. I was just so proud. Yesterday, we got to see him awarded, recognized by the U.S. Congress, which is the first Afghan that I know of in history, recognized by Congress for the operation we went on where he rescued 4 Navy SEALs. And just an incredible human being. And I'm very privileged to have gotten to serve with him. And by the way, like, just so people understand our history, we did all 8 deployments together. And then when I wasn't out operating, I didn't go back to base, and he went home. I lived in his community. I lived in his home. His wife Hatra made us meals and dinner when we came back from the mountains being cold and wanting a good meal. And I was there when his oldest son Mashoud was born, and his daughter Mashuda, and held them as babies. So more than just an interpreter, a very dear friend.
Yeah, it sounds like you two obviously share a very close connection, which we're going to get into here with the book and everything. Before we do that, because you mentioned he saved your life many times, do you have one memory that sticks out to you as like the craziest or wildest time where he saved your skin?
Yeah. So this may not be the kinetic war story you're asking for, but to me, this is a story where not only did he save my life in this particular day, but he showed me who he was and how trustworthy he was from an integrity level and from a street smart level, which for my job with him was very important. We were setting up safe houses in staging areas for operations, and when we do those, we want to be all local national. Look, you don't want U.S. equipment being left at a safe house in the middle of the mountains, and so we put water and food and blood for the assaulter guys, and to make sure they had all the right essentials, medical equipment, clothes, cash, like all the things that we'd have. In addition, local national weapons, AK-47s and PKM machine guns and RPGs and grenades and ammo and all this stuff. We have to stock those houses. And so I was going to buy some AK-47s, the PKM machine gun, and RPGs from some local nationals, which were more than likely Taliban. And we knew the tribal leader of that area, who was the uncle of this guy we were going to do the purchase from. And I was heading out to do this purchase, and Aziz said, "Hey, I think these guys are going to rob you and probably try to, and maybe even try to hurt you or kill you." And because of that, he convinced me that we need to take a different strategy. He talked with other teammates with me who were busy doing something else, but because of his street smarts and his intuition, we trusted Aziz and did that. Brought these guys with us, and we brought a guy named Dano and Bank with us. So there's this mud wall compound that went inside, and as we're inside this compound, Aziz and Bank are looking over the wall to make sure no one comes. And myself and Dan, who spoke better Dari than me, was talking to this Afghan guy with the guns. And we're looking at the guns in the back of the SUV. And while we're looking at these guns, we heard Aziz start yelling. And right away, the guy yells, the guy we're with yells and says, "Don't hurt them. They're my friends." And we're like, how do you know who's on the other side of the wall? And so Dan grabs him, puts a pistol into his ribs, and I run over to Aziz and Bank, and they have these guys pinned in a Corolla. There's four of them. They all look like stereotypical Taliban. They have AK-47s, and we had the upper advantage on them. Had coming over the wall, and they couldn't get out of the vehicles. Had them at gunpoint, hold them in that car, and we were able to go out and get the guys out of the car, take their weapons away from them, zip tie them, laid them down in a ditch, and took their keys and threw it back into the grass, and then moved their car out of the way. And we took the guy with us, and the whole time we're driving away, he's yelling, he's screaming like, "Please don't kill me!" But the best thing for us to do was turning him over to his uncle, and we never seen him again after that. But that day, if I wouldn't have trusted Aziz's intuition and his street smarts, and he didn't care, he was just like, wouldn't have cared. I would have either been captured or killed that day. That day I realized, man, this guy actually cares about me. He's going to keep me safe, and he's extremely witty, and I need to lean on him. And that was one of many incidents like that. That just, I'm not from Afghanistan.
Right.
I'm from America. I got my own. Here I know how to survive here, but we go to places like that, you got to trust locals, and he was someone that proved to be very trustworthy, and he saved my life that day.
That's unbelievably touching and incredible, which is why now we're going to get into the collapse of Afghanistan, because you make it a goal of yours when Afghanistan starts falling apart that you're going to go get this guy. Now, when did you start to realize Afghanistan is going to fall much, much quicker than what they're claiming with the government? Because it fell, Kabul fell in like 72 hours, and they thought it was going to take 6 months, right? So when did you start to recognize the situation was going sideways?
Well, when President Trump was in office and he was talking to the Taliban about withdrawal, I was uncomfortable with that. I was, first of all, uncomfortable with President Trump talking to the Taliban, but I believe that President Trump would have kept Bagram Air Force Base as a strategic location, international hub. The difference was when President Biden, really quickly in office, he started talking about a full withdrawal from Afghanistan, and meaning abandoning that base. And I began to be concerned, but I'm like, certainly we're not just going to up and leave. And then, that talk and the negotiations that President Biden was having, starting the second day in office, by the way, and then the State Department starting to interact with the Taliban, really made me concerned, because you have the White House in this negotiations, not with the international community that's using Bagram Air Force Base to keep terrorism and global terrorism at bay, not with any of our allied partners, Britain or anyone else, none of NATO, not with the Afghan government that we put in place for 20 years. They're negotiating solely with the Taliban, our enemy of 20 years. Right. That made me very concerned, because I'm asking the question that every journalist should have been asking, but no one was. Why is the White House speaking to the enemy of the last 20 years and not speaking to the Afghan government, not collaborating with our international partners? It became very concerning to me, and I was like, if they pull out quickly, the country will collapse. And I thought in maybe a month. A lot of people were like, "Oh no, it'll take years because of the Afghan National Army." You have to realize that the Afghan National Army and Afghan National Police have been held up for the last 20 years. The entire international community, including the power of the United States and the money of the United States, has been providing air support. supporting advisory roles, running Bagram Air Force Base for 20 years. If you take that away from them overnight, they don't have the infrastructure to withstand that kind of transition overnight. It would be impossible. And so I knew if our government did that, it would happen very fast. And so I began to get concerned in about April, because one of our old teammates, Bashir, who has worked with Aziz and I and was trained by our CIA and put in our program, he turned over to the Taliban. And while we were in Afghanistan, he had several of our team members killed, drove a vehicle bomb into my house, blew up my home, tried to kill me and my friends and my teammates. Luckily, we weren't there. Tried to kill Aziz and ultimately had me abducted by a foreign intelligence agency. So we knew this guy was very bad. We actually caught him and turned him over. But during the Obama administration, he was released and went back to the Taliban. And now he was back in town. Everyone was kind of just like sharks in the water, knowing the U.S. was going to leave. The Taliban was coming in, starting to look for old interpreters, allies, and they started to look for Aziz. This is in April. And so we started moving Aziz safe house to safe house, and he was kind of on the run from that point. I had started trying to hurry up and find out how can I expedite Aziz's special immigrant visa, which he had been in that process for 6 years. It's only supposed to take 9 months. And this is a guy that did 15 years of special operations, access to top secret information, polygraphed, vetted. Like, we know who he is and what he did for us. But he had been in this process for 6 years. And I know people in Congress and Senate, and I still couldn't get those strings pulled. And so I began to be desperate for two things. One is Afghanistan falling and us losing Bagram Air Force Base, which is the most strategic place on the globe between Iraq, Iran, Russia, and China. I was concerned about that. But then selfishly, I was really concerned for my friend. And I started looking at plans to go get Aziz, his wife, and 6 kids and get them out of there, because I knew if Kabul would fall, they'd still be there. Bashir or others in the Taliban would certainly know who Aziz was and kill Aziz, probably torture him, rape his wife and daughters, and sexually enslave and force marry his daughters. That, a little girl that I held when she was a baby, and I was not okay with that. And so I made a decision that I'm going to go and physically get Aziz and put a team together, go get Aziz.
So let me stop you right there. Putting the team together, walk me through how you decide who's coming with, the logistics, how you getting into Afghanistan, how you going to get out to, it's not a vacation hotspot. You just don't grab a margarita at the airport and roll in. So what's the plan here?
I'm super glad to hear you say that, because a lot of criticism we got was like, you guys are going out there like a bunch of cowboys getting in the way of the military. And it's like, first of all, do you realize, like, I don't have the ability to just go by myself on a rogue operation, land a C-17 plane there, load it up with people, and fly out on a DOD-controlled airport. There's obviously has to be some coordination and collaboration with governments and things like that. So a lot went into it. First of all, we couldn't use anybody in the military because the military was not allowed to participate. So I had to go to people in the veteran community. I went for people with that I knew for a sustainable amount of time and really trusted them. 2 had ASO or AFO level experience, meaning they had the ability to operate as special operators independently, not with large support networks. That's the background I came from. And thirdly, they had to be older, mature guys who had already did their fighting and wasn't going to go out there looking for a fight with the Taliban, because that is the opposite of what we needed. We needed people that were mature and not looking to go out and start any trouble, just go and do exactly what we're going there to do, and that's help people that couldn't help themselves. And so one of those people I called were Tim Kennedy. A lot of people know Tim Kennedy because of his public presence. What people don't know about him is he's a Green Beret, ASO level 3 special operator with independent singleton experience, and I've known him for 14 years, and so I really trusted him. And then it was a whole array of other people from, Dan Stinson, who I served in Afghanistan with, Joe Roberts, another recon Marine, and then some guys from, some Navy SEALs and Green Berets, and some guys from the CIA's paramilitary unit, ground branch, that had an extensive amount of experience in this. We put this team together in addition to a lady named Sarah Berardo from the Independence Fund, who was very connected in Washington, D.C. And so it was just the right team with the right skill sets to pull it together. And I didn't even realize it at the time. But as we were planning this out and talking about what we were going to do, one of the guys brought up a point that, hey, it's great that we're going to go get Aziz and his wife and kids, but this is orphanage over here with 3,500 people, 3,500 kids. Why are we not helping them? And then we kind of paused and looked around the room and seen the experience and the willingness. And I think all of us were pretty strong people of faith. And I think we all felt God was burdening our heart to help these people that couldn't help themselves. And we made a decision in that moment to be obedient to that burden and just say, let's help as many Americans, interpreters, their families, women, children, Christians that will be persecuted. Let's help as many people as we can. And beyond that decision, to answer the rest of your question of how it happened, beyond the decision, I think the biggest decision we made that we should get credit for is our obedience to that burden in our heart. But beyond that, I'm not smart enough. I'm not capable enough. I don't have the experience to pull off what happened. It was an absolute divine miracle, in my opinion, because in 3 days we watched a series of events unfold that if any one of them didn't fall perfectly in place, we would not have been able to do what we done. The first was, what you asked about. How do we get civilian effort onto a DOD-controlled HKI airport to go evacuate Afghans and Americans? We had to get permission from the Joint Chiefs. Sarah Berardo was able to make that call and get permission from the Joint Chiefs for us to go there, have permission to be on that airport and do those evacuations. That is, anybody knows anything about the military, that in itself is an impossible door to open. And it was a sheer miracle that happened. Secondly, we needed a place to bring people to, because contrary to some of the criticism we got, I'm not the State Department. I don't have the ability to put someone in a plane from another country and fly them right in the United States. I don't have that authority. I have the ability to move people out of a country, but where they land, I have to have permission to do that. And I have no authority. The State Department has that authority. So we had to get permission to bring them somewhere without visas, or else we'd be human trafficking. And the only place you can do that is Laredo, Texas. It's pretty close to here, but in the real world where you have to follow rules, we needed permission. And so we contacted some people that we knew. Some of our team members knew the royal family in the United Arab Emirates. And we asked for permission to bring them to UAE in their humanitarian center. Not only did they say yes, but they rolled out the red carpet. Doctors, medical care, food, housing, playgrounds for the kids. Like they said, bring them here, we'll care for them. And not only that, but they said, we'll give you 2 C-17 planes with pilots to be able to help with the evacuations. The third day of after the decision, I got a call from Glenn Beck at the Blaze Mercury One as their charity. And I'm actually here right now at the Blaze Studios, and I just got done with Glenn. But Glenn called me up and he said, I got on the radio because I just wanted to do something. And I thought I'd raise a few $1,000s, but in 3 days I raised $21 million. Ultimately, I raised $46 million. He's like, but I don't have effort on the ground. Like, what do I do? And I'm like, I know exactly what you're going to do. You're going to start paying to charter planes. And we teamed up together. And so I just saw this miraculous orchestration of events come together to make the perfect scenario to be able to actually effectively rescue people. And we moved in to Abu Dhabi, and I set up the operations center there with Dan Stenson. Sarah Berardo had an intake center for applications in Washington, D.C., and we had a ground team at the HKI airport. And we just started orchestrating these rescues. We didn't know how much time we had, but we knew we had to move very quickly, because if we stopped, even from 5 minutes to sleep, you felt guilty, because I'm trading 5 minutes of sleep for someone's life. Like the level of desperation at that airport people saw it in the news, hundreds of thousands of people trying to get in the airport. But people saw a glimpse of how guys are hanging on an airplane, trying to fly off and falling near their death. And they said, well, how stupid could someone be? Like, it's not they're stupid, is that was the level of desperation. That people were just panicking. I mean, imagine, like, the best description I could give is women, if you're a parent at all, imagine as a mom kissing their baby goodbye, especially their daughters, and to just give them away, because they'd rather them have a chance to go be removed by the U.S. military than be stuck with the Taliban and become sexually enslaved. They kiss their babies goodbye, put them on top of a crowd of thousands of people. They crowd surf these babies to the wall, and somebody at the end would throw them as hard and high as they could to get them over that wall. What they didn't realize was many places on the other side of that wall was concertina wire, 6 feet high and 20 feet deep. They were throwing these babies in the wire, and my buddy Joe counted 6 of them in there that bled out. I mean, that's the level of desperation these people were in, and the airport was. And the news didn't really show that. It was a terrible situation, and we were there trying to operate in that environment, and I want to say this did not have to happen. And this isn't an attack. I think is people that read my book or hear me talk could think I'm attacking the administration, the White House. I'm just telling the truth of what happened. I've been in the military a long time, and I've talked to a lot of people who really understand military strategy. The American people were lied to by the White House and by all the mainstream media to say that we were in a 20-year war, we were in an endless war, and we had to get out at some point. That is not only not true, it's not consistent with the successful military strategy we had in the history of the United States. If conventional kinetic warfare in Afghanistan ended with our U.S. military in 2018, in the last 3 years prior to that evacuation, we were doing a support and advisory role to the Afghan National Army and the Afghan National Police, and the entire international community were participating in that at Bagram Air Force Base, which again is the most strategic place in the globe between Iraq, Iran, Russia, and China. It's at the heart of terrorism and the heart of our enemies. And we were participating in this international effort, and it was working. The Taliban was kept in the mountains of Afghanistan, and the world was a safer place. American national security was safe because of it. And we never talked to our allies. We never talked to our NATO partners that were at that base. We never talked to the Afghan government we had in place. We started negotiating with the Taliban to turn it over. There's no explanation. That question's never been asked, and there's no explanation. But we were told that we had to leave because the U.S. had been in this 20-year war. 2,500 troops at one point were there. At the highest point in the last few years was 4,000 during the withdrawal. You have to think historically in America. We still have 80,000 troops in Japan since World War II. We have 40,000 troops in Germany since World War II. We have 35,000 troops in South Korea since World War II. Historically, we maintain a strategic presence. We end wars, and we could have ended the Afghan war and say, hey, okay, the war is officially over, but we're going to maintain the strategic military presence in the entire national. Be here. We're all going to participate, and we're going to continue to have special operations missions like we do in the rest of the world, in Africa and Syria and everywhere else. And we're going to support the Afghan National Army so they can maintain this country until the point, whether it's 20, 30, 40 years, that they can hand it off. That's what should have happened. It didn't happen. And not only that, but they pulled out our military and evacuated the base before our civilians and our allies.
I do want to ask you a question quick. I watched your Fox, the special you guys did that aired on Fox that Tim Kennedy was also in. And you brought it up a couple times now about criticism, because I do want to ask about this. It is framed in there that like some people on the ground were very pissed off with you at the gate, specifically at the airport. What do you have to say to those people on the ground, as portrayed in that documentary, who were upset with the fact you guys were rescuing people?
Well, the criticism that we got mainly came from people back here who had a problem with Tim Kennedy because he's famous. That's my interpretation of what happened. There was one person on the ground that had a problem with us there. Everyone else partnered with us. I mean, we had enthusiastic people that wanted patriotic men and women in uniform that wanted to do the right thing and wanted to help. So we seen only one person in all of our time
and
there.
And that's the guy at the gate who wouldn't let the buses come in, correct?
Right. And his response was, this isn't a Tim Kennedy show. And so that was a personal thing with Tim. And it, unfortunately, and I mean, it's under investigation, so I don't want to say too many things about it, but it cost lives. In my opinion, that decision cost lives of blue passport holding Americans. And it could have easily been worked out. It was just an attitude issue. And but most of the criticism we got was from people back home watching on social media, and a lot of people loved him, a lot of people don't like him, a lot of people never like people that are popular and want to throw stones, but and most people assumed that we were there in the way of the military. But again, you have to pause and think for a second. Could a bunch of veterans get a C-17 plane, land at a DOD controlled airport with no permission from anyone, no coordination, and start flying out people? Right. That's ludicrous to even think about. Right. I mean, we had all the coordination and permission. Every one of our manifests were approved by the Joint Chiefs. We were in collaboration and by proxy, the United States government. And because of that, we're able to save American lives.
No, that's a good answer. And then I wanted to, the reason I asked is because that documentary, which you should all watch if you're watching this on Fox, it's very, very, very good. That point of the gate is brought up, and I wanted to give you the opportunity to kind of respond to that very important moment of the documentary. Now, Aziz, how dangerous is it? Are you going out in the streets to get him? Is there a meeting point? Like, how are you working your way through what's essentially become a Taliban stronghold?
Yeah, well, first I'll say, I didn't get Aziz personally. Okay. When Aziz was got, I was in Abu Dhabi, coordinated. I was on the phone with him. I was trying to move him. He had already tried 7 times. I tried to move him on the 8th time because he was getting shot at by us, by our military. Like he's trying to get to the gate, and they're like, shooting, not shooting to kill him, but shooting to scare him off. And a bunch of young Marines doing their job protecting that airport. And then the Taliban was shooting at them. He's got a 7-year-old and 6 kids, trying to get him to the airport. A wife who just got appendix out. So he's trying to get to the airport. It's so difficult to go through those people. And in his 8th try, he's like, I just can't do it. And I'm like, man, I've seen you do more. You have to. Like, you don't have a choice. You have to get in the airport. And so I coordinated with this guy, Sean G, on our team. And I up, and Aziz and him ended up on opposite sides of the airport. And Aziz is like, I can't stay here too long. So Sean G was able to get a hold of an Air Force Special Operations guy named Sean High. And he'll write about him in the book. And he actually was one of the active duty people that was able to go outside the gate and grab Aziz and his family and get him inside the gate. And I'll forever be grateful for that. And I remember getting a picture and seeing Aziz safely inside and knowing that, man, my friend's safe. And it was just such a relief. But I still needed to see him personally in Abu Dhabi before I could believe it was real. Man, and that day was the first day. We got 183 people out. The next day, 800, and then from that point on, it was 1,000 a day, and we just kept moving people. I mean, like I said, Sea Spray. You read about Sea Spray in the book, and if you've seen the documentary, you probably see Sea Spray in it. He lost 37 pounds in that 10 days. He just didn't stop moving, going outside the wire, grabbing people. And Tim was one of the guys going outside the wire, grabbing people. Sean G was, and Tim was just outside the Abbey Gate when it blew up. But when the Abbey Gate blew up and we lost 13 of our service members, that's when the gates were welded shut, and the evacuation stopped for that phase of it. And we were kind of paused and was able to rally up and realize we had got 12,000 people out in that 10 days. And we had the opportunity to make the decision, like, what are we going to do now? The United States military is leaving. But we're not in the military. We don't have orders to leave. They want to stay. Our troops wanted to stay, trust me. But we didn't have to leave. And so we chose to stay. And I think there's a couple of reasons we chose to stay. We felt just this obligation, burden to still stay, but also we knew that Americans were still there. I mean, the news said there was hundreds of Americans there because the White House was saying there was 100 Americans still there. I'm not saying it as a debate. I'm telling you, there were thousands of Americans still there. One of the things the White House would say was, if they're choosing to stay, because if they want to stay, all they have to do is go to the airport and evacuate. And it's like, man, like they're so detached from reality. The NEO operation, which is the non-combatant evacuation, was given to the State Department. It doesn't belong to the State Department. NEO operation is a DoD function to evacuate civilians from war zones and catastrophic areas. That's what it's for. The State Department's for the diplomatic negotiations. The DoD's for military strength and force. And it's, I mean, to give that NEO operation to the State Department is like saying, hey, a baggage handler works on the aircraft so he can sit in the pilot seat and fly the plane. He's going to crash. And that's what happened with this. The State Department did not know how to do that. The U.S. military made a perimeter security, just like they would embassy. They did not allow our military to go outside the wire to evacuate civilians, to help Americans. And they ultimately gave the outer perimeter to the Taliban. And so anyone that knows about military strategy knows that whoever controls the outer perimeter controls the ground space. They're actually in control, and they control who gets in and out of that ground space. American with blue passports were eventually going to the Taliban checkpoints and showing their blue passports, getting them taken from them, getting them beaten. They were witnessing people like Afghan allies getting their arms cut off and drugged behind cars in the streets and getting shot and murdered in front of them. I mean, why would Americans with blue passports go and show that to the Taliban? I mean, I would imagine anyone. I wouldn't go and do that. And so I imagine many chose to stay in hiding. And unfortunately, I believe many are still there today. But during our time, we knew there were thousands still there, and we chose to stay because we absolutely knew we could not leave. And the truth is, I have to say this, whether I'm right and there was thousands of Americans there, or the White House is right and there were 100 Americans there, it doesn't matter, because one American is too many.
Right.
We have a promise. The American people should have a promise from the United States government that if you're in harm's way, if you get caught in a combat zone or in another country, the United States military will come to get you. Whether we have to scorch the earth around you to come get you, like, and lose people, like, we're going to come and get you. And so to think that we left people there willingly, whether it's 100 or 1,000, is unconscionable, especially the fact that we removed our military. We gave up Bagram Air Force Base, that strategic location. That was a secured area with an airfield. We gave up all those things before we evacuated our civilians and our allies. And then we gave the Taliban a date, not terms. The White House said, we'll give you this date that we're going to leave by. You don't ever give a date in negotiations. You say, if, and again, I don't agree we should have left, but if we left, we should have said, we will leave when we get every American citizen out, when we get every one of our allies out, when we get our $85 billion in equipment out and our technology out, that's when we'll leave. And if you get in the way, we're not leaving. And but instead, the White House said, we're going to leave on this date. And then when we went back and asked for more time, the Taliban said no. And we folded to that and showed the world who was in charge of that negotiation. And it was the Taliban.
Do you know if there were any instances of direct conflict with rescue ops? Like, was there ever an instance where Americans, like a Delta team, had to go outside the wire and grab someone and they ended up having to kill some people in the process? Did that ever occur?
No, I don't know that actually ever occurred. And I think the closest happened was we moved a special operations team on one of the people we were rescuing, and they had a standoff with the Taliban, and the Taliban folded and gave the girl up that we walked them. We had a girl that we were literally walked the team on top of. The Taliban was after her, and they got her. She's right. I actually write about that in the book. Another time, Tim had a face-to-face standoff with some Taliban guys, but I believe the Taliban. I don't know this. I believe the Taliban would have been given standing orders to not to start any conflict with U.S. military or rescue operations because they wanted us to leave. We had already told them we were going to leave. So if they could buy time and not start any trouble and let us leave, then they would. They were ruthless with the civilians right in front of us. But as far as military, it appeared from everything I understand and witness, it appeared that they were not going to try to have any conflict with the United States military.
I do this has been fascinating, and I hope the audience is enjoying this as much as I am, because this is an eye-opening look at the chaos on the ground. I do want to pivot real quick before we got to go to Ukraine, because you were in Ukraine with Benjamin Hall, who's the Fox News journalist who got rescued. For our viewers who maybe are unaware of that, I have a couple questions. Number one, what was your experience? What's your perception of what's going on in Ukraine? Like, how bad is it on the ground over there?
Can I say one more part of Afghanistan, or can you
go ahead.
Okay, let's say one more part about Afghanistan, because this is the part that gets overlooked. The airport was not their complete operation. After we chose to stay for another 2 months, we got another 5,000 people out through a coalition effort with a lot of amazing nonprofits. After that was open, myself and Dennis Price, Staff Sergeant, 4th Street Marine, Scout Sniper, we chose to go into Tajikistan because so many people were stuck in the Panjshir Valley, thousands of people. They wanted to cross over the Panjshir River into Tajikistan, but the geography there, like 25,000-foot peaks. If you even made it through that geography, it would take like a week, and you might run in a 1,000-foot cliff or a Category 5 rapids or ice melt water in the Panjshir River. And so, in addition to that, the Chinese military was there, the Russian military was there, the Taliban was there, and the Tajik border guards. So they didn't know where to cross. So we wanted to go on the other side and be able to provide that information. And so myself and Dennis Price flew into Tajikistan. We drove about 12 hours through the mountains. We spent 10 days on that border. We did about 90 miles of border reconnaissance, and we're able to plot 6 routes. Every night we swim across the river in Afghanistan and build and provide information to our government intelligence agencies, to other NGOs that are evacuating people, into the commandos in the Panjshir Valley, so they could safely get the civilians out. And we did that in a period of 10 days. And I want to say that that operation was kind of a part of the story that a lot of people hadn't heard. And Dennis Price is going to he was a reservist in the Marine Corps. Marine Corps allowed him to go on this humanitarian operation. He'll be getting awarded the highest non-combat medal, Navy Marine Corps medal, by the Marine Corps for his actions in doing that. And at one point, those points we were within 30 yards of the Taliban at night, getting that information to help these people. And we were honored by Congress. Congress recognized this effort. But I say all that to say this. I witnessed, Dennis Price and Sea Spray and all these people just do such amazing things. And we continue to get asked about Afghanistan and what we didn't do in Ukraine. Like, why would you, like, beyond Aziz, it's no brainer why I would go help Aziz. Why would we continue to help these people? And, I think the easy answer is the right thing to do. Like, I mean, when the governments of the world completely failed, including our own, it was very discouraging. But what brought me hope was to see that when the governments of the world failed, good people stood up and did what the governments wouldn't do and couldn't probably do, and did the right thing. And that was really encouraging for me, because I think all of us kind of struggle with hope in our country right now because of the political divide and things that we don't agree with. But it was really hopeful to see that when the governments don't do the right thing, people do. And one of the things myself and Seaspray were asking in this interview was, why would you do it? And of course we said, because it's the right thing to do. But Seaspray was asked a question that I think is important that we can all learn from. He was asked, was it worth it? Was it worth it? And he said, it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be worth it to do the right thing. And whether it's something like this or in your personal lives, like, I think we all have the ability to do the right thing in our own little spheres of our life. And we always try to balance the ROI. Like, what are we going to get out of it? What's the return on investment? But it doesn't always have to be worth it to do the right thing. And in this case, I don't know if it was worth it or not. I thought it was worth it to Aziz and his family and the 17,000 Afghans. And I believe that burden God put in our heart. I think it was worth it to God for us to be obedient and go do that call. But I think the world can learn something from this, that there is hope, that there's good people around and will stand up and do the right things. People that supported us were not people that I typically agree with. There's a lot of people that follow me on Instagram that hate me and bash me for my conservative views and stuff like that. But they were writing me like, hey, I don't like you, but what you're doing is awesome. And where can I support? Where can I give money? And it was so cool. And we had this Jewish organization that they wanted to pay for 2 planes, which was like $1.5 million, a big donation. And they called me back and they said, hey, we tried to make the donation, but we can't do it. And I was like, oh, why? Did I give you the wrong routing number or something? They said, no, we're a Jewish organization, and Mighty Oaks Foundation, my foundation, is a Christian organization, and we can't give you that money. And I said, okay, but you do realize we're rescuing Muslims, right? And we kind of laughed and moved forward, and they made that donation. It was just an amazing moment in time where politics, religion, like nothing else mattered besides good people standing up and do the right thing for other people. And it'll always be like just super special to me to have been part of that.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's the whole thing. And like I said to the audience, go ahead and get the book, Saving Aziz. You can get it anywhere you want to get books. It's an incredible story, and I think it's something young people especially should learn about. And everyone, because it does go to show that there's good people. Everyone wants to be at each other's throats these days. That's kind of what the media teaches you to do. Hate each other. Everyone's a villain. If you disagree, you have to hate. Not true. Not true at all. So I think your story represents that you can, a lot of good out there. Now on the Ukraine, because I do want to talk about this, because the war is ongoing. What was your experience when it comes to the situation in Ukraine?
Well, it's changed. It's changed since I began. It started in February. We had ceasefires on the ground before the invasion because we knew it was coming. We were watching it unfold. And then I went immediately after the invasion. I was in Ukraine, days after the invasion. And originally we went there to see, hey, how can we help? Afghanistan is a lot different. People couldn't go in Afghanistan and load up mass amounts of people to get them out. We were able to do that. Ukraine, people could drive a bus across the border, open the door, load it up and get people out. So the mass evacs were not something we needed to do. And, one of the things about special operations is you do what's special, you do what other people can't. And so we were going in more contested areas, difficult areas where people couldn't get, and getting super vulnerable people out, or people that would be like high risk people out. And so originally we started looking at ways to do rescues, started moving people, rescuing people. Seaspray got a couple of orphans that were actually American citizens by adoption legally, but hadn't ever processed yet. So we're getting some of those kids out because the orphanages have abandoned them. And then everybody, I think your audience might have heard of Benjamin Hall.
Right.
And we were asked to go get Benjamin Hall. At the moment, he was catastrophically wounded. And that was another, actually, I believe that was another miracle, because literally in order to operate, for us to operate outside of curfew, we needed medical vehicles and to be able to get around Ukraine at that time and we had got those within an hour before we got the call that said Benjamin Hall has just been catastrophically wounded. We don't know about the rest of his teammates. We know some people were killed. Can you guys go get him? I remember Seaspray giving a brief and saying, the U.S. military can't go. Our government agencies can't go. Ukrainians can't take care of him because he's too wounded. and he has a wife and two little girls at home. He's an American. If we don't go get him, he's not going to live. And do you guys want to go? And everyone in that room was like, but let's go get him. And we saddled up, we got in the vehicles, and we headed to him. Kiev was under attack at that moment. That's what made it kind of risky, because the Russians were trying to seize Kiev in that moment. And we did an all-night operation. I can't say the details. I don't know if we ever will be able to say the details of how we actually got him out, but he was in bad shape. He was catastrophically wounded. We had a doctor with us. We had two doctors with us that were former JMAL, like special operations doctors, very experienced. He had no pain medication. They had him drip ibuprofen, and he lost limbs. I don't want, he lost his feet, his hand, and part of his hand and eye. He had shrapnel all through his body. He was in bad shape. And then Sasha, the local correspondent, she was killed. The only thing left of her was a small part of her body. The two drivers were killed, and Pierre, his cameraman. Pierre, everyone loves Pierre. Everyone I talked to Fox loved Pierre. He's a 25-year cameraman. Had been there, been all through the Afghanistan war. He was just like the guy that everybody loved working with. And he was standing right next to Benjamin Hall when the blast went off, and he took a piece of shrapnel through his femoral artery and bled out. And so we got Benjamin Hall out. After we got him across the border, we turned him over to the 82nd Airborne. We were coordinating with the military the whole time. Again, not a rogue operation. Coordinate with the military and handed him over to the 82nd Airborne. And on the Polish side of the border, they flew him to aeromedical unit, and they ultimately got him to Landstuhl, Germany, where he was treated, and eventually moved to San Antonio, Texas, where I think he's still at right now, and and doing well. And then the next day, we were asked to go back and get Pierre's body, and of course, we no, we're not going to go get a body in a active combat zone, because and put our team's life at risk for a body. But then Michelle, his wife, showed up, and she said, "I want my husband." And we're a bunch of softies, and we're like, okay. So we went in, and when we got to Pierre's body, they had moved him into a hearse, and we were going to move him in our vehicle, but he's in his coffin. We obviously open and identify his body, and they had a flag in there. I remember just like when I saw that flag, this is the Irish flag. It was like orange, green, white, and orange. When I saw that flag, it reminded me of our guys, and how when we flew our guys home, it was so important to drape the flag over the coffin, and you put the stars at the head, and they run the stripes down to the feet. And so I kind of like frantically Googled, like, which way does the Irish flag go? Is it the orange first or the green first? And we looked it up and then put it appropriately on this casket, and we made it really tight and taped it down and did his casket right. And we were like, man, he's in his hearse, and it just looked too perfect to ratchet strap him in our vehicle. So yeah, I told the hearse driver, hey, we're gonna buy your hearse. And he said, well, it's not for sale. And I was like, well, we're either gonna take your hearse, or you're gonna get on the phone with Fox News right now and make a really good deal and get the best deal you could ever get for your car. And we put him on the phone with Fox, and I don't know what the deal was, but he looked pretty happy. and I drove that hearse with Pierre out to his wife Michelle, and she was a pretty amazing lady. We were able to turn her husband back over to him with dignity. So.
Wow. Well, hey, we'll cut it here. I know that you're tight for time, and Chad, I just want to say thank you. This was a great interview. Tell the audience real quick where they can find you on social media. I know you're big on Instagram, but I'll let you shout out where the audience can look for you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm most easily followed on Instagram. I do all the platforms, but Instagram's where I actually interact at. So just under my name, Chad Robichaux. Our foundation is Mighty Oaks Foundation. We're still in Ukraine. I have a team there right now doing bringing medical supply to Ukrainians and teaching them how to use them, doing our mental and spiritual resiliency programs that we do at Mighty Oaks. And Mighty Oaks does, veterans, active duty service members, first responders. We have some amazing programs. Any veterans or first responders out there, spouses need help. Everything we do is free. We do about $6 million a year in programs. So check it out, mightyoaksprograms.org. And we always need supporters. So any of your supporters want to jump on there. But today I'm asking, please, we're book launch tomorrow. Get a copy of Saving Aziz. I want to sell books, but more importantly, I want to share this story. It's so important about what happened in Afghanistan, the unbiased truth, and we can never let something like this happen again. And there's still people there that need to be spoken for.